MPs that I suggest you take down. Yeah, I have some MPs, the Deputy Foreign Minister.
Israel apologises as one of its top diplomats in London is secretly recorded talking about taking down the British Foreign Minister, Sir Alan Duncan. Good evening. It was a dinner between friends, British and Israeli, who work in politics. But it was being secretly filmed by Al Jazeera TV. The Israeli diplomat is recorded saying he'd like to take down some British MPs, principally the number 2 at the Foreign Office, Sir Alan Duncan, who he said was causing a lot of problems. The British civil servant involved has resigned, and Labour is demanding an investigation into Israeli interference in British politics. Also tonight, a truck attack on Israeli soldiers in Jerusalem. 4 are dead and 17 injured when a Palestinian drove at speed into a group of cadets. Theresa May denies she's in a muddle over Brexit, but reveals nothing more about her negotiating position. And who's in, who's out, and who's got to play again in the 3rd round of the FA Cup. Israel's ambassador to the UK has apologised after a senior diplomat was caught on camera saying he wanted to take down the Foreign Office Minister, Sir Alan Duncan. Shai Mossad, who was filmed by an undercover journalist, claiming Sir Alan was creating a lot of problems. A British civil servant who was part of the conversation has resigned, as Jane Death reports.
It was in this London restaurant, a few steps from the embassy, that an Israeli political officer and a civil servant sat down for a meal and a conversation which crossed a diplomatic line, with talk of toppling members of the British government.
Can I give you some MPs that I suggest you take down?
Well, you know, if you look hard enough, I'm sure that there is something that we're trying to hide.
Yeah, I have some MPs.
This is Shai Mossad, who called himself a senior political officer at the Israeli embassy. He's talking to Maria Strizzolo, a civil servant who worked for Education Minister Robert Halfon, former political director of Conservative Friends of Israel. So, who in government would the embassy man like to take down?
Deputy Foreign Minister.
We still want to know.
No, he's doing a lot of problems.
The number 2 at the Foreign Office, Sir Alan Duncan, celebrated critic of expanding Israeli settlements.
Now, one should not use the word apartheid lightly, but as a description of Hebron, it is both accurate and undeniable.
And the view of Sir Alan's boss, Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson.
Boris, he basically good. Yeah, he just don't care. He's an idiot, but so far he became the Minister of Foreign Affairs without any kind of responsibility.
Shai Mossad and Maria Strizzolo didn't respond to our requests for a comment today. It's understood she's resigned from the civil service. It's deeply embarrassing for Israel, particularly when Theresa May recently stood up for its government in the face of criticism from the outgoing Obama administration.
The Israeli ambassador has spoken to Sir Alan and apologised for what he said were Shai Mossad's completely unacceptable comments. And the embassy is vigorously downplaying Mr. Mossad's influence, saying he's not an Israeli diplomat, but a junior embassy employee whose employment will shortly be coming to an end.
The UK government said his comments don't reflect the views of Israel and it considers the matter closed. Labour doesn't. It wants an inquiry into improper Israeli interference in British politics. But the Israeli embassy is also close to some in Labour. The filming appears to show Shai Mossad with MP Joan Ryan, chair of Labour Friends of Israel, saying he's got money for a delegation to visit Israel.
Just now got the money. It's more than £1 million. It's a lot of money.
The Israeli embassy has money. The question that's been raised is, could it have undue influence?
Well, in Israel, the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has claimed that a Palestinian who killed 3 women and a man when he rammed his truck into a group of Israeli soldiers was a supporter of Islamic State militants. Several more were wounded in the attack as the soldiers were getting off a bus in Jerusalem early this afternoon. The Israeli officer cadets were on a tour of Jerusalem at a famous view of the city when the attacker drove the truck straight into the group at speed. As they scattered, the truck stopped and reversed back towards those on the ground. The driver was shot dead by soldiers and a civilian tour guide.
The truck sent me flying. I was lucky, just a couple of bruises on my left side. The right corner of the truck hit me and sent me flying, and I did a couple of flips on the grass. I'm amazed that I'm standing here right now.
4 cadets, 3 of them women, were killed and 17 injured, 2 of them seriously. The attacker was identified by his uncle as Fadi Ahmed Hamdan Kumbur, a 28-year-old father of 4 from East Jerusalem. He's reported to have served time in Israeli prison. The Israeli Prime Minister drew connections with last year's truck attacks in Germany and France.
We're here after a brutal and tragic terror attack where 4 soldiers were murdered, 3 female soldiers and a male soldier. We know the identity of the attacker, and according to all the signs, he was a supporter of the Islamic State.
A spokesman for the Palestinian militant group Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip, praised the attack.
We consider it to be a natural reaction to the Israeli occupation's violations and crimes against our people, our land and holy places.
Here, the Prime Minister, Theresa May, has denied the government is muddled about Brexit, insisting she will announce more details over the next few weeks. In her first TV appearance of the year, Mrs May insisted that Britain would not be keeping bits of EU membership, dismissing the idea that ending the free movement of people or staying in the single market is a binary choice. Jane Dodge reports.
They're patriotic at Dagenham's Sunday market. Rain or shine, thousands come here every week. 62% of voters in this part of East London backed Brexit in the referendum.
Buy one, get 4 free.
One of only a handful of London boroughs that did.
This may be prime Brexit territory, but any sense of celebration has long since gone. There's a growing sense of impatience amongst some people here. They want the government to spell out what happens next and then get on with it.
Even those who voted to remain want the government to speak up.
I don't think they've got a clue what they're doing. I don't think they ever had a clue what they were doing, and I think it was such a surprise when people voted out. They were just left high and dry. And now they're making it up as they go along, waiting to see what happens next.
Well, it's a big rigmarole, isn't it? It should be just... We have, but I think we should be out by now. Yeah. We want out, we should be out.
None of us know where we're going, what we're doing. Nobody's making it clear of what's going to happen. It's ifs and buts. And at the moment, prices are going up, but our wages aren't. So,
what do you want to hear from Theresa May?
What is actually going to happen?
Well, Theresa May did put her head above the parapet today. She denied the government was muddled. She said Britain would regain control of immigration and gave her strongest hint yet that the government may not try to stay in the single European market.
Often people talk in terms as if somehow we're leaving the EU, but we still want to kind of keep bits of membership of the EU. We're leaving, we're coming out, we're not going to be a member of the EU any longer. So the question is, what is the right relationship for the UK to have with the European Union when we're outside? We will be able to have control of our borders, control of our laws. This is what people were voting for on the 23rd of June.
It was enough to get a thumbs up from Nigel Farage, calling them reassuring words, but asking when will it convert into action. Labour was unimpressed.
Very telling, I think, that she had one question put to her 3 times and still didn't answer it, which is, are you prioritising immigration over access to the single market? That was the question she didn't want to answer. And I think now, 10 to 11 weeks from the triggering of Article 50 and the most important negotiations for a generation, we need more clarity than that, and we haven't got it.
As the Prime Minister looks for new trade deals outside the EU, a welcome tweet from Mr Trump. He says he's very much looking forward to meeting her. And for those shoppers at Dagenham Market concerned this is all taking too long, Theresa May has promised more details in the next few weeks.
The US President Barack Obama says his successor Donald Trump has not spent a lot of time sweating the details of policy. He said he'd had several cordial conversations with Mr Trump, but the two were opposites in many ways.
There's a difference between governing and campaigning, so that What he has to appreciate is, as soon as you walk into this office after you've been sworn in, you're now in charge of the largest organization on earth. You can't manage it the way you would manage a family business.
At least 20 people have been killed in the Iraqi capital Baghdad after 2 suicide bomb attacks. 13 people died when a car bomb exploded outside a busy wholesale market in the city's commercial district, wounding several others. The extremist Islamic State group claimed it was behind the bombing. Hours later, another attacker blew himself up in a crowded marketplace in the Shiite district of Baladiat. The former Iranian president, Akbar Rafsanjani, has died in hospital in Tehran after suffering a heart attack. Rafsanjani, who was 82, had been a dominant figure in Iranian politics since the 1980s and managed an unexpected return to influence in his later years after his close political associate, Hassan Rouhani, was elected president in 2013. Police in southern Germany are hunting for a people smuggler who left 19 migrants, including 5 children, suffering from hypothermia at a motorway parking area. Officers said it was minus 20 Celsius when they found the people in a van, which had British licence plates. The extreme weather across Europe has left many migrants struggling to cope with cold and snowy conditions. Aid organisations have been distributing heaters, clothes and food in an effort to keep them warm. Sport, and in the most exciting of today's FA Cup third-round games, Chelsea progressed after beating League One side Peterborough 4-1 at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea rested several first-team players, but Pedro scored twice, with captain John Terry receiving a red card in the second half. Peterborough's consolation goal was scored by Tom Nichols. Fulham will join Chelsea in the fourth round draw after beating Cardiff 2-1. Cardiff took the lead with a deflected free kick in front of a sparse crowd of just over 5,000 in the Welsh capital. Fulham equalised just 6 minutes later before a tap-in gave the London side victory. In today's other matches, League Two Plymouth earned a replay against Liverpool after a goalless draw at Anfield. Tottenham defeated Aston Villa to reach the fourth round. Middlesbrough are also through after a 3-0 victory over Sheffield Wednesday. And tonight's main news, Labour has demanded an inquiry into whether Israel has been trying to influence British politics after an Israeli diplomat was caught on camera saying he wanted to take down the Foreign Office Minister, Sir Alan Duncan. Israel's ambassador to the UK has apologised, and a British civil servant who was involved in the conversation has resigned. We're back tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Until then, that's Channel 4 News. From all of us here, very good evening.